Hello, podcast family, and welcome to Regulation Revolution, where we are igniting a revolution to help the world effectively manage and respond to their emotional experiences. It's not about what happens to us, but how we react that creates harmony or chaos in our lives. Emotional regulation is a complex process involving many factors. We offer this podcast to provide insight for you about how you fine-tune and powerfully decide to transform your complex emotional states into empowered instances of self-mastery, peace, and increased awareness. Instead of having your emotions control you, you can learn to have control over your emotions. The following program in no way constitutes therapeutic counseling and does not establish a therapeutic relationship or offer any premise of confidentiality with any listener or participant. For more information, visit us at regulationrevolution.com. Welcome to today's episode of Regulation Revolution with your co-hosts Amy Reamer and Barry Vassar, Heart and Mind. Amy is a licensed therapist, professional speaker, and teacher. Barry is a pre-licensed therapist and practice manager at Heart and Mind. To find out more about Heart and Mind, please visit heartmindrva.com. Welcome back to Regulation Revolution. Once again, you have Amy Reamer, you have myself here, Barry Vassar. We thank you for joining us. We're hoping that you've been able to check out some of our other podcasts that are out there. You can always visit our website. You can visit our Facebook page. But we want to jump into the topic of co-regulation. Amy has explained in the past, and we've talked about it in our Regulation 101 podcast, which if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to check that out. We've talked about regulation a lot, but what does co-regulation look like? And we've got some examples. Amy, I think you have a story of co-regulation that might explain what that looks like without even getting into the technical terms.
Yeah. Well, we touched on co-regulation a little bit in our first episode, but the first episode was just sort of a broader look at what regulation is, why we're doing this podcast, what's our point behind it, what's our goal, all that good stuff. And we mentioned co-regulation, which is, between two people or between a person and something else that's helping them to regulate. It could be music or nature or, things like that. But also because we really want to help folks with understanding, like especially with babies and toddlers and children, how they develop self-regulation is through co-regulation. And so we're going to focus a lot on that, but we'll talk about co-regulation in lots of different ways, different people and relationships and all that good stuff. But I thought I would share, before we were recording, I remembered a little story of something that happened with a family member. So it was at a birthday party, and I have a little great nephew, and he came into the room, and I could see on his face like something wasn't quite right. You could tell he was upset or something had happened. And so, and he's 3, and I picked him up and I said, what's wrong, buddy? Did something happen? And he shook his head, yeah. And I was like, well, what happened? And he, wasn't telling me, he's just now starting to communicate more with words and things. So it's not always his go-to. And so I just said, so is everything okay? And he sat there and we played with something in his hand and he got down. He went back to the room where all the other kids were that they're playing. I go back to talking to the adults at the table. A couple minutes later, here he comes back, same look on his face, and I pick him up and kind of do the same thing again. And he's very expressive with his face. Like I could see like on his face what was going on. And so I said, finally I said, was someone mean to you? And he shook his head, yeah. He has an older sister. And I said, was it Sissy? And he shook his head, yeah. And I was like, oh, that just stinks when someone's mean to us. It doesn't feel good. And he shook his head, yeah. And then he got down and he went back. And so my point of that story, it's not about, that I'm this fantastic, aunt or whatever, but the point of the story is that he didn't necessarily need me to fix it for him. He didn't need me to tell him what to do. What he needed was for me to understand that something happened that made him feel bad. And that someone heard that, someone saw that, someone acknowledged that. And then he was able to get down and go back to what he was doing. So when we talked about the ladder before, right? Like he came down the ladder because his feelings had gotten hurt or whatever had happened with his sister. And then by having an adult that listened to him, recognized something wasn't quite right, helped to name it even a little bit, that something, somebody was mean or something. That was just a guess on my part. You're at a party with a bunch of kids. He's most of them. Something probably, somebody probably took a toy or something like that, right? So, I'm just taking a guess at that something has happened that hurt his feelings. So, so he didn't need me as an adult to fix it, but he also doesn't mean we don't want to dismiss it. And that's what we do a lot, is we just say, oh, well, you're fine. It's okay. Just go back and play. And so that's fine. But guess what? That's what happened because he got co-regulation. He was able to get back to feeling fine and went back to playing. So there's a difference between encouraging a kid to go do something and then meeting them where they're at. And so regulation is really about us getting met where we're at. And that can come from another person. That, like I said, it can come from a pet. You can listen to music. You can sit out in nature. Co-regulation can come from a lot of places, but what co-regulation leads to is self-regulation. So when we talked about the teeter-totter back in that first episode, what co-regulation is, and I think we talked about the teeter-totter and you adjusting like for your daughter so she could, go up and down because you have more weight. So we said that's what co-regulation is. You sort of met her where she was at so that she could be successful in what she was doing. And then eventually she can manage the teeter-totter. And so, but what often as adults, what we do is we expect kids to automatically be able to do that. Or by age 6, you should be able to do that. By age 12, you should be able to do this. By 18, you should be able to do this. And yes, there are different levels of self-regulation as they grow, but there are plenty of adults we know that aren't very good with self-regulation. And we adults still need co-regulation. This is why one of the reasons probably why I never did a podcast before you and I started talking about it together. In reality, you and I co-regulate each other while we're talking about this stuff, right? So, so there's a very big difference in what happens in the context of relationship and how we internalize that. So if someone has heard us, listened to us, understood us, we now can actually develop our own ability to be compassionate with ourselves, listen to ourselves, do something that helps us because someone helped us to do that all along, as an infant, a toddler, and a child, whatever. And that could be, it could be multiple people. It could be parents, teachers, pastors, nursery school teachers, aunts, grandparents, whatever. That's all going to internalize and build their muscle and ability to self-regulate.
Right.
The co-regulation leads to self-regulation. That's the road to self-regulation.
That's what I will tell a lot of couples and parents that I work with. And I've kind of modified it to the being a safe place and being available. So instead of, the partners getting in an argument, husband, wife, whatever combination it is, and one is upset over something, and instead of trying to shut that down, for that person, for the other person to stay kind of on that teeter-totter in a place where they are safe, I'm okay, it's okay that you're not okay. I think I use that one a lot with folks. It takes one person in that relationship, whether it's the parent, the child, the husband, the wife, whatever it may be, coworkers, whatever it may be, to be saying, I'm okay with you not being okay. So instead of trying to squash it, let me kind of come along beside you with it. I'm here. I'm available to you, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So I believe I've always just believed that as like the start, I think, for a lot of folks. Because most of the time when somebody else is upset, if you get upset with them, it's going to end bad.
Yeah, if you both drop down the ladder, how's anybody going to get back to the top, right? If you're both dropped.
Right. With several the couples I've talked with, even explained it with their kids, going back to that ladder, maybe we get a video in here or pop in that ladder again. Like, you and your partner are up here in a safe place. Partner does something, whatever it is, or something happens at work, you get triggered and you've kind of moved here. So you're into a little bit of fight and flight. So you've got your high alert, you're mobilized, you're everything else. Now here's where it gets tricky. You show this to your partner. If your partner gets triggered by you, instead of bringing you up the ladder, the partner comes down. Now you're both dysregulated. And what happens? Now the threat to the initial partner has become the partner who's trying to bring them up. So I keep telling couples, when he or she is off the charts, they're dysregulated, you can't push them up the ladder. You end up chasing them down if you come down. So you've got to stay in that safe place.
You can't reach down and grab them and pull them up either.
No.
Which is what parents probably mostly try to do is, oh, my kid, is in fight flight. So here I am. I'm going to just, everything's fine. You're good. It's okay. And we try to just cover it up and move them out of it. Don't come out of there. You don't want, you don't need to be upset.
Right. I'll tell a lot of parents.
Put a hand out by being, like you said, by being a safe place. You can put a hand out to them and say, hey, I'm here to help you. When my nephew, came up, to me, I put my hands out, but if he didn't want me to pick him up, I wasn't going to, just pick him up anyway. Right. Like, I offered, would you like me to pick you up? And he accepted that, sat in my lap. We talked a little bit, back down, go off, play, come back. So with kids and probably with adults partners too, you're going to get that sometimes, like coming back and forth. The difference with parent-child versus like two adults in a relationship is that the responsibility is on the parent to provide co-regulation to the child, whereas adults, we have to figure out how do we co-regulate each other, because there are days that you may have had a really rough day, and your friend is there. And so they can help you out. They can be at the top of the ladder and extend the hand down and say, hey, bud, you're up here. Or, then there's another day, the friend might be there. And you can offer that. Obviously, when it becomes a problem is when everybody drops down the ladder, is offering the safe space, right? But for children, because they don't have those nervous system developed yet, they don't have that nervous system that's as developed and all the brain parts that have developed as well as adults, their system is learning based on what they get provided by parent. And I think we have a video that we're going to show. And for those in like audio world, you'll be able to hear this, and it can be impactful auditory wise too. But to me, it's extremely impactful visually. So we'll make sure we have a link that we provide to it so that, if you want at another time, if you're listening to this in an auditory way and can't see the video, you can go and pull this video back up another time. But it's very impactful of how important parents are as regulators for babies and children.
Getting our video queued up here. I'm going to go ahead and maximize this.
There we go.
Wow. Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 34 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still phase experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age. And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her. This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. Baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. Baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why are we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yeah, so much care.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in the really ugly situation.
Yeah. So for me, still think experiment is the best way of understanding how dependent on adults babies are for their regulation. Look, I mean, that was fast with the mom drop affect. That I don't know about you, but my first thoughts go to, and there's lots of research out there too about this with like, if talking about depression, unfortunately we have a lot of women that experience postpartum depression. And then, more recently with their technology, I think about people on their phones and their tablets and not having that face-to-face engagement and interaction with their children. And so, how is this impacting the development of their co-regulation into self-regulation? What's your thought? And like we say, we use this with clients. I've used it with clients too, especially parents. But
Yes.
yeah.
I've used this with clients, and it's interesting when you talk about the technology piece of things. I had a client that I was working with that was primarily telehealth, and so we were like this and video and such. And they came in for an in-person sitting in the office, and when they did, they said, "I've been seeing you for like 6 months now, video wise and everything else." She goes, "But for whatever reason, it's so much calmer just sitting in the room with you." Mm-hmm. And so I started talking to her about that is the effect of co-regulation. That is we feel each other's, and I don't want to get metaphysical, but I really do believe we feel each other's energy level. Mm-hmm. And so it's, when you think about the baby, when I show that each time, I point out to folks, notice how quickly the baby bounced back the minute mom was engaged. This child was not crying for 20, 30 minutes to cry. The minute mom said, "It's okay, I'm here," you see the whole baby's demeanor, the smile is back. And that's how quickly it can happen. And so sometimes I think when we're working with our children, for parents out there, and like you said, even with adults, just being available is enough to kind of snap somebody back into a regulated state. Just being present is able to, and I think that video really illustrates it, just that moment she engages. It's so picture when, going back to our ladder, picture when somebody is upset, we go back to you meet their energy with your energy, you're just as upset, and now they're going to be further upset. Imagine what it would look like if the child looks at you and is having a tantrum in the middle of the store. And instead of grabbing them by the arm and saying, "You're embarrassing me," and pulling them out of the store and everything else, it might seem awkward, but what would it be like to sit down on the floor next to them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's trying to stop the tantrum, be available for them in the tantrum.
Yeah. And that's such a great example. And it touches on so many other things too, as to why sometimes as parents, we may want to do that, or we've learned, we listened to this podcast, so we were told that would be a good thing to do. Right. But then we have, that judgment of other people. I look like a bad mom. Like we have our own thoughts that go through our
All those narratives we tell ourselves.
all that self-talk going on. And how that happens. And so we would go drop into fight flight. We go down the ladder because all these people are looking at me and I'm disturbing people and they're going to call CPS and, like all these things go in your head. You drop to fight flight. Your fight system says, we got to stop this now. And so then that's when we go into the, you're not going to be able to play on your, tablet. You're going to, get a spanking. You're going to like whatever you're going to get to try. You're trying to use fear to get them out of their fear state. Well, fear plus fear equals more fear. So,
there's our math equation for the day. Fear plus fear equals more fear.
We always give everybody our lovely math, so yes. So it doesn't equal safety. Like you can have fear in the equation, but safety's got to be in there somewhere if we want everybody to get back to safety.
Right.
So I think what happens is, one, I think our society, we've gotten to a very much, we got to teach kids everything, or we model it and show them. Well, what better way to model for kids how to be calm and regulated than to be calm and regulated yourself, like that.
Imagine that one.
But just like, which is why I think the tiger, the owl, the hippo just resonates really well, is because if their tiger is present and their hippo isn't, whatever you're trying to teach them, they're not going to learn. I mean, even as an adult, I want all the adults to think about this. When you were a kid, think about a time you got in trouble and you got punished. Do you remember what it was you did, or do you remember the punishment? And what was the lesson that you learned, right?
Right.
Most of the time, and there's probably sometimes you can remember what you did, but I am guessing that most people, if they learned a lesson, it was basically either don't get caught or I'm not going to do that again because I don't want that punishment. Sure. But did you really learn why not to do that?
Right.
That's where you talk about the difference between punishment and consequences, right? Consequence is very different than punishment. So consequences can be very natural. If the kid's running around with their ice cream and you say, you might not want to run around, you're going to drop your ice cream. And then, ma'am, they drop their ice cream. They don't really need any other punishment. That was just pretty natural one. They kind of learned, run around with the ice cream. Sometimes you drop it.
Right.
Like that's a natural consequence. Why do we need to now, put something else on top of that?
One of the biggest hurdles that I have to help parents sometimes get over, and you triggered this in my head, the number of times I've had to do this, when you talk about the tiger and the owl and the hippo, when they have a child and they say, why did you do it? And the child says, I don't know. And they're like, no, you do know. And I tell the parents, no, I don't think he knows, because his tiger was out, his owl, which was small anyway, has flown off, his hippo's gone under. It just looked like a good idea to smack my sister with a stick. Why'd you hit your sister? I don't know. Are you mad at her? I don't know. And they're like, he knows. And I'm like, no, I don't think he does know. I think something got triggered in him or her. He took an action. They took an action. And the hippo wasn't there saying, why are we doing this? Or thinking about consequences. What did I tell you? You do that again. Well, and I think about, and I don't want to go down this road too far, but a lesson from a child that I've seen was mom fussed at child for something child did. When she started fussing, hippo went under, owl flew off. Okay. So the kid repeats the behavior again. And the mom says, didn't I just talk to you about this yesterday? And it's like, you talked to him, but nobody was remembering and listening because he was in a panic state because he was getting fussed at. So he didn't even hear what you said. So are we going to do it again? No, we're not going to do it again. Next day, don't you remember what I told you yesterday? Oh, yeah, that's right. You told me not to do that. But so sometimes everything is offline. Picture if the parent stays, as you're talking about, picture if the parent or the spouse or the partner, whoever, was able to stay regulated, bring that co-regulation in, person, the child, whomever comes back up the ladder, and now they can actually hear you.
Now's the time for the lesson.
Now's the time for the lesson.
But that might not happen 5 minutes after what happened. It might not happen for a couple hours. It might need to happen the next day.
Right.
When the owl is back, when the hippo is back, all of that, so that you can talk about it, that they can identify. They're not in this frightened, flight, panicky state where they can't think straight.
When somebody tells me they can't get their partner, their child, or whatever to calm down, because this happens with couples as well, can't get them to calm down. And they're like, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm like, stop doing. You're feeding that energy. You are dysregulated and they are feeling that. So now you're upset, they're upset, kind of like we were talking about at the beginning. And so I keep trying to get people to say, if you could practice your own regulation, you can help your partner, your child co-regulate. And that's that big difference. We're talking about differentiate. Regulation has to do with you. Co-regulation has to do with you and
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, how you're interacting with someone or something else, and whether that helps or hurts, whether that leads me to more safety or it leads me to more danger.
Can we define for our listeners, viewers, and all those folks out there, walking beside? That's a nice little phrase. I've actually seen that phrase in so many different places. I saw an insurance commercial. Will come along.
Really? Yeah, come alongside you.
Come alongside you.
Well, I think it might be on our website, something about walking beside you on your journey in therapy. Because
that sounds great.
Yeah, well, because the philosophy is it like, this is your journey. Right. I'm here to help you. I'm here to listen. I'm here to, maybe try some things that we think might help or whatever. But ultimately, it's your journey. I'm not going to push you in a particular direction. I'm not going to pull you a certain way. I'm not going to tell you that you're right or whether you're wrong. But, I can help you to think certain ways. I can point out. So how'd that go for you? So to help you recognize it didn't go. Those are some natural consequences there, right? So, it doesn't mean that you're not going to look at tough stuff, but it's like this is your journey, right? Like it's not my job to figure out where you go. I think also as parents, when kids are dysregulated, maybe even in couples too, we feel we've done something wrong, and that's why we're dysregulated. Or if I were doing it right, they wouldn't be dysregulated.
Right.
Dysregulation is a very normal thing in our lives. We go up and down the ladder quite a bit, and everybody does. So the fact that, your child has a tantrum doesn't mean that you've done something wrong as a parent. It means your kid's learning, they're frustrated, their system's overwhelmed, there's too much on their plate, whatever. That's what it means. And all they need is someone to help and to stay with them until they can get back, and there's a clip from Inside Out movie that I use a lot to also show this. I can see if I can find it. We might continue.
Yeah, I can look while you talk. Continue.
It's Sadness and Bing Bong. And when they're trying to get to the train station, and Sadness helps. Basically, Sadness co-regulates with Bing Bong. That's not going to say that as the title, but that's
right.
But it's a great example because Joy is trying to push and pull Bing Bong to go do what they were planning to do, get into the train station. Then Sadness ends up co-regulating with Bing Bong, and then they end up going to the train station. So the goal was the same, that in what they were trying to accomplish, Joy was trying to accomplish, what Sadness was trying to accomplish, actually ended up leading them to the same place. But
do you want me to cue that video up?
Did you find it?
I've got it right here.
Yeah, pull it up. It's such a great example.
There we go. And I'm pretty sure, there we go.
I've been hearing it train. My rocket. Wait, Granite, I was still using that rocket. It still has some strong power left. Always a friend who likes to play. But stop. No, that feeling you can't take my rocket to the top. Granite, I go to the moon.
Bing Bong is dysregulated.
Went down the ladder.
Gone down.
Hey, It's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip
Pause
planned
it for
for
a
us.
second.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle.
All right. So what Joy is doing, I have seen people do a billion times. What you've got is Joy has dropped down the ladder and her fight system says, we got to get to the train station. You know, Bing Bong sad and sat down. This is a problem. So the way that she's trying to fix it is the pushing and the pulling, right? Oh, it's okay. Oh, here's a tickle monster. There's the whole distraction. Let me distract them from their sad feelings. So it's not that Joy's, doing anything necessarily wrong or bad or mean. It's her nervous system says, oh crap, because we needed to get to that train station to get back to headquarters. And now this sadness is going to slow us down and we're not going to be able to get there. And so let's go do this. So this isn't about Bing Bong. It's actually about Joy. And so Joy wants to get to the train station. Bing Bong knows the way. And now he's sitting down sad. So what you have
now
here
is, I'm on the way out the door. I got to get to work and get this kid dropped off at school. The kid is sitting on the floor saying, I don't want to go because I don't have my favorite shoes. The kid is upset over the shoes. So myself as a parent, I'm looking at the clock and now I'm upset so I'm coming down the ladder.
That's right. And so then it's maybe you're going to threaten punishment or you're going to try to do something silly and turn it, and sometimes silliness is helpful. It moves people through sometimes, but it's not really acknowledging if they're feeling something big. And obviously Bing Bong's feeling something big, but yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. What? Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all we had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great...
I have to pause it right there because that is the perfect example of coming along beside. Amy, you're still there with me. Hello, Amy.
Oh, I think my video just went out for a second. Sorry.
There you go. That is, sadness is not afraid or being triggered by this feeling. That is that piece that we were talking about, is that I am still safe. I am still okay. It's okay that you're not okay. I'm not going to get dysregulated.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of trying to shut the feeling down, I noticed that the first thing she does is acknowledge that you lost something that meant a lot to you.
Yeah, there was an acknowledgement of that. And then Joy's response, which I think is another really common thing, sadness, don't make it worse.
Right.
And so the fear is because it's an uncomfortable feeling. No one likes to feel sad. No one likes to feel hurt or alone. Like, these are not good feelings. And her nervous system doesn't want to feel that. And I'll mention this other piece and then we can continue. But also, they're far apart. Joy is up here being sing-songy, playful. Let's do this. Bing Bong's sitting here like this. She's so far away from him, he can't see her. So even if that might be helpful, he can't see it. Whereas sadness, of course, because she is sadness, but she comes in, she sits next to him, she's slow and low. He's slow and low, right? So it's like you're speaking the same language. People are speaking different languages, you can't understand them.
Right. It is. All right, I'm going to hit play on this.
They were wonderful. Once we flew back in time, we had breakfast twice that day.
Sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah. It's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on. The train station is this way.
How'd you do that?
I don't know. He was sad, so I listened to what...
Hey, there's the train.
I'll stop it there.
Yeah. But yeah,
that's
Boy
almost
was like, what the heck just happened?
well. That's almost a still face experiment that we showed. He's sad, the baby's dysregulated. There's Bing Bong dysregulated. Just in those few moments of acknowledgement and availability, he's like, okay, I'm better now. Here's the train station. That's how. So think about, I want our listeners, our viewers, to think about the amount of energy that is spent in trying to fight somebody's feeling, stop their feeling, get over that feeling, as opposed to just a few
Walking
moments of
aside. Yeah.
just being the feeling with them. It's okay.
Yeah.
So you're fighting with the kid to get out of Walmart on the floor, and you spend 15 minutes and actually create a bigger scene, because now you're as upset as they are, and now you do look like the bad parent you're trying not to look like.
Yeah.
But like if you did you sat beside it for like 5 minutes. Totally get you choked up there.
Yeah. No, but I feel for parents. I get it. Like,
Yes.
and these concepts, of course, I always say it is obviously easier for us to sit here and talk about this than obviously in the moment we probably would still be fighting those same feelings. And the other piece, like with the latter, I think the other reason with especially feelings like sadness and some of those more lower feelings, the nervous system doesn't want to go down to the bottom of the ladder either. So we sort of fight to stay.
Right.
Or, fight to stay up there. And so we don't, the feeling is if I sit down with you, you're going to pull me down there too.
Exactly.
And I don't want to go there. We actually talk about this in supervision a lot with my residents and supervisees, because this can happen to therapists when, they're listening to something of a situation or story from a client. Nervous system's like, oh no, I don't want to go there. And so what our fight flight is, our little interventions. Let me pull this tool out. Let me try this. Let me do this. And we're trying to fix it. And that's not really a therapist's job, even though some people think it is. It's not really our job to fix it. We are really supposed to come alongside. And we do have some things that can help fix some things, but it's when they're in that right place in that journey and talk about it, and then, hey, let's try this, right? So we can help with regulation, which we can help with co-regulation. But part of co-regulation is how do I stay out of where you're at, or keep at least one, I kind of have a visual of how do I keep one hand at the top of the ladder while I'm reaching, the hand down. So like I'm still there with you and reaching that hand down, but I'm anchored myself up here rather than, oh God, you're going to pull me, right down the ladder with you. All of me is going to go there.
I took my head was I took the kids to one of those bouncy places, I call it, where you can jump in the balls and jump on the trampoline and bounce up and such. And when he said that, it triggered in my head, because I can remember when my daughter jumped into the balls, she got stuck where the little foam things are stuck. Well, I was standing up on a little podium and she wanted me to come down there and get her. And I'm like, honey, if daddy jumps in there, if you can't get out, I can't get out. Let me tell you, because I will get stuck. So I had to grab the pole and lean down. And then she grabbed my hand, and then I had to talk to her. She's like, don't drop me. I'm like, you jumped in here. It's not going to break you. But I was like, okay, that's fine. But all of that is to say, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I think if people could visualize your kid has jumped into the foam, into the balls, they want you to get them out. Well, you're not going to get them out by jumping in there. You got to,
and you're not going to magically figure out how to get out if you walk away either.
Right. You can't just walk away and say,
on your own.
Yeah. So you can't do just leave them there. You can't jump in there with them, because it's not going to work for either one of you. So you're absolutely right. You anchor yourself. And sometimes, I don't want to go too far down the road. Coming from my own parenting experience, I've had to, and I don't get it right all the time, that every now and then I will hit one out the park. There are times when one of my kids are off the rails and my response is, Daddy can't do this right now. And I have to leave the room and get myself together. I'm like, I'm going to be right in the next room. And that's fine. Because you know how kids are. Kids are like, go away. You really don't want me to go away. If I go away, they start crying. So I'm like,
adults do that.
What?
Adults do that too.
Adults do that too. What? They're
oh my God, I can't believe you went away.
I know it. It's get out. He left me. Well, you told him to get out. But just to where I have to stop and center myself, because I realize I'm getting frustrated with whatever it is, getting the shoes tied. I'm getting frustrated, just as frustrated as they are. And I'm like, you know what? let's just leave the shoes for right now. Just leave the shoes. I want to go sit down. You play with what you're playing. We'll come back to the shoes. And that's to give them a break from what's stressing them, but also because I'm realizing that I am not in a place to give them what they need, because now I'm triggered. Mm-hmm. And then we come back and revisit. Those are the rare times that I get it right.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to do that.
I always also encourage parents that, like in wrestling, to be a tag team. Mm-hmm. If your partner is in there worn out with them, because sometimes we got kids that are going to tantrum for 30 minutes. And that's wearing and tearing on your system, trying to hang in there with them. And so, if you're lucky enough to have a partner, then, if you notice that your partner's coming down the ladder and because oftentimes, especially for people who've been together a while, they know their partner better than they do. And they can see when they've gone down the ladder and they don't even realize they've gone down the ladder. So, if you see your partner's gone down the ladder with your kid, might be a good time to do a tag. You tag yourself in and they go take the break. And then, you come in, to provide that co-regulation if you've run out of gas. So the co-regulation piece and that whole like walking beside and all that is, to me, and what I understand from research too, is that's what helps to people to develop that self-regulation. So, so if you think about the teeter-totter, you're helping them adjust and improve their ability to regulate, so then they can kind of get on that teeter-totter and regulate it themselves for the most part, because they have that internalized co-regulation that's occurred throughout their life, gives them the ability to self-regulate. We all still need co-regulation at different times, especially difficult times, you lose a loved one or financial crisis, or, when there's a big thing, sometimes it goes beyond our capacity to self-regulate. Not, we need others. It's one of the reasons why we talk about, grief and the rituals that people do when they lose someone. Isn't really for the person who passed, right? It's for the people who are still here. Right. I made me think about back when we had COVID and we're losing people, there's this pandemic, there's all this stress. And then when people would pass, whether it was from COVID or just from other causes, people couldn't have funerals, they couldn't have memorial services, they couldn't have celebrations of life. And, oftentimes you may not be maybe it was a coworker, and yes, your spouse can help you, but they weren't someone that knew them really well or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so you're not resonating with them on that loss. Mm-hmm. I remember when a cousin of mine passed away, I was doing intensive in-home and I was on the way to a client's house when I found out. And, of course it was totally unexpected. She was young. It was really a shock. And so, I'm sitting here in my head going, am I going to be capable of going into this home basically? And can I regulate this family?
Right.
When I'm in a dysregulated state myself with just learning about this loss. And I called my supervisor, and it was one of the great advices I've gotten, said, you need to connect to somebody who's experiencing the same thing. So I called my mom. This was her niece. Talked to her about it. I think she's actually the one that texted me, but we know you're not going to get the same thing from a text as you will from a phone call, from a telehealth, from in person, right? There's levels of it and there's pieces of it you can get, but it's not the same experience. So just connecting to my mom on the phone, sharing with someone who's also lost the loved one, was enough to, get me regulated enough. I could go into the home, do my job, be there for my clients. And then afterwards, then start dealing more with my grief and the loss and that kind of a thing. So that understanding the importance of co-regulation and who you can co-regulate with. Obviously, not everybody is going to be a good co-regulator.
Right.
And some people, especially if you had abuse, neglect, relationships and people were not necessarily very safe when you were a kid. You can't co-regulate usually with most adults, even if they're at the top of the ladder offering all kinds of safety. So I tell my supervisees, you could be therapist of the year, have zero empathetic, nurturing, welcoming, opening, safe, exuding safe. It's kind of, tattooed off almost on the safe person. And your client is still going to could be dysregulated and not feel safe with you, because it's not about you. It's about their nervous system saying, I don't trust humans. I don't trust men. I don't trust women. I don't trust bald guys. Depending on their situation, like what's in their history. I had a situation in grad school where just thinking about what triggers us. One of my colleagues that was in class said there was something about the professor that was running our residency, and that was unnerving to her. And she said, but I don't get it, because like, she's very nice. She's very kind. I don't know her. She wasn't one of my teachers, like I don't have a past with her. Why in the world I feel uncomfortable with her? Her brain wasn't making sense of her feeling.
Right.
And so just having some trauma training at the time, I just said, does she remind you of anybody? Like anybody you know? And then I literally almost saw a light bulb go off on her forehead. You could just see in her face that she reminded her. I won't go into details because I don't want to share her story, because it was actually very bizarre and people might recognize some of it, or if she's watching this. But she realized that professor had a lot of mannerisms that were very similar to a person who was involved in a traumatic event for her. As soon as she recognized it, she was perfectly fine with the professor, because her brain now made sense and could connect why I was feeling uncomfortable. And so what I would say is, like, I didn't necessarily fix that for her, but just her awareness and helping her brain to make the connection to it helped her to separate it. And then she was perfectly fine, like with the professor the rest of the time, because now basically so I'll give it to you in Al Tiger terms. Tiger got the mannerisms of this unsafe person off of this other person.
Right.
The owl's like, I have no idea why. Or the hippo's saying, I have no idea why they're unsafe. So I guess we'll just go with the tiger for right now. Let him lead. When I brought that up and said that, and this connection was made, maybe from the hippo's memory or whatever, this connection was made, the owl then could tell the tiger, that's not the woman that was abusive to you or was traumatic to you.
Right.
It's your professor. She's never hurt you. And the tiger said, oh, okay, I'm going back to sleep. So as soon as, you connected the dots in that situation, now she's an adult. This was a trauma that happened as an adult. It wasn't as a child. So, it was a very pretty clear cut memory and a pretty clear cut connection. That's not always the case, especially with kids, because it could just be loss. It could just be disappointment. It could be feeling I'm not enough, I'm not loved. That's not as clear cut. But I always say I'm not a trigger chaser. And so co-regulators sometimes think they got to help the person figure out the trigger, the why.
Right.
Why were you upset? What happened? They try to chase it. And rather than chase, I always say chase safety before you chase triggers. Help them regulate, help them feel safe. If you figure out the trigger later, if you learn from it and you can change something, that's great. But chasing the trigger is not going to necessarily bring you safety.
Would you say, and I know it's not fair to speak in absolutes, but that you can't have co-regulation without somebody being regulated or something being the regulator? I know it's an absolute, but I'm just trying to picture, how can you have co-regulation if one or the other is not regulated?
All right. So let's look at it this way.
Okay.
They got to have at least one foot in safety. So that doesn't mean they can't bring in some energy, that matches some fight flight, but they feel safe. And so, but if you got both feet in fight flight, then no. If everybody has if there's all the feet are in fight flight, or like you said, if everybody's in the pit with the phone, nobody's going to be able to get out.
Gotcha.
But at least if one person's got a foot, an ankle, a hand, back where you can get out, you can move out, you can be safe. It's the whole thing with, like the roller coasters, like there's fear and excitement and there's, risk and danger, but there's also this element of safety with the checks and the belts and you're, strapped in and da-da-da-da. So you can have the fun and the excitement of that sympathetic system of the fight-flight system while feeling safe. Don't like roller coasters. They have a hard time. They can't keep one foot in safety. They go all in, and then it's like, nope, not getting on the roller coaster.
My daughter will one day hear this podcast, and this will totally ruin her illusion that she has. But for some reason, she is very convinced that we are much safer if I hold her hand when we're on the roller coaster, like the literal roller coaster. And you have to have the heart to tell her, I can't stop it from going off the tracks. And by the way, if we fly out, I'm flying out with you.
So,
but it makes her feel good that I'm holding her hand.
That's her way of getting co-regulation.
Right.
That's her one hand, 1 foot in safety is holding dad's, hand. Funny story on that. I think when my husband and when my son was younger, he's a really tiny kid, really skinny. And, so he was tall enough for the ride, but he's still like a really teeny tiny little thing. And they were on that boat that like goes upside down, it's like a pirate.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot the name of it, goes upside down. And you got, the shoulder straps and all of that. Well, they get upside down and my son starts hollering that he's falling out. And my husband is got the thing on and he's strapped down. He can't get his, arms out. And so like he's going into fight flight because he thinks his kid's about to fall out of this ride and do anything to fix it, right? He can't get in there. He doesn't. So neither one of them had a hand,
We got all kinds of tigers out.
Luckily, he just felt like he was coming out. He wasn't really coming out. But my husband, knowing how small he is and narrow shoulders and stuff, can picture easily like, him coming out. So whereas if they're like strapped all in, blah, 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 you could be like, you're good. I see it still strapped in. You're not moving, but he couldn't even really see him either. So, his fight flight, goes off. So, and that kid actually loves roller coasters to this day as an adult. So, there's got to be an element of safety. Energy can change. You can, match. You can say, man, so here's the difference. If I were to say, so let's say you were upset about something, you share something that makes you mad. And I go, oh, wow, it sounds like you were really angry. That's not really matching sort of the energy of it, but I might be like, holy crap. I can really understand why, man, that made you mad. Woo! I am safe in both places. I feel safe in both places. The first one might be okay, and you might enjoy that, and that's fine, but it might be too far away from the emotion of the feeling, right? Because it's, just so bland or whatever. And with kids, because kids don't use language primarily for this stuff. It's all their feelings, their emotions, the body language, the nonverbals, right? So we need to bring nonverbals in so they feel heard. It's like two different languages. They're speaking Swahili and I'm speaking Chinese and nobody knows what anybody's saying. So you've got to speak the same language in some way. But what happens is you get pulled down the ladder and now you just got two tigers going at it. They're not feeling really heard or understood. They're just two tigers going at it.
So I'm kind of watching our time on it. Some of our takeaways from this, to whatever you will on that is for our folks to remember that part of co-regulation is one, having that 1 foot in safety in some way, shape, or form to be somewhat anchored. I guess also remembering to come along beside. You're not trying to squash what the other person is feeling, but you're trying to come along beside them while they're feeling it. And you're trying to remain in your own safe place. And through those actions, the other person, the child, the partner, whoever, you're providing co-regulation. Would that be, fair to say? Everybody needs a little sadness to sit beside Bing Bong, right?
Right. And so obviously sadness isn't scared of sadness. That's like the world, right? So like you said, she wasn't scared of it at all. And it was like, oh, let me go sit with that. Cause that's, that's so sad. It really resonated. They were speaking the same language. And so that helped Bing Bong to move back up the ladder. And then they end up going and doing what Joy was trying to accomplish by pushing and pulling, which for her was being driven by her own fight-flight system. So we all love Joy, and yes, she's happy all the time, but she also had come down the ladder. in that situation. Is she had a little point going on?
My nervous system just wants people that are happy all the time.
Yeah, yeah, like, we all do. So, I think the other piece of co-regulation to remember is you can have that 1 foot or both feet in safety. It might take some time, or they're not going to they may not immediately, come out of it,
Right.
simply because you're doing that. You
Right.
just have to remain steady. It's kind of like that, the whole, oxygen on yourself before you help others, right?
Mhm.
You might sit there with oxygen on for quite a while before, they're able to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Kids, because they're learning and they're growing. And what you'll find is the more they do it, the better it will get. The tantrums start to get less.
Mhm.
They don't last as long. They're not as frequent. They're not as intense. It starts to go down because they internalize that co-regulation, which becomes self-regulation.
Gotcha. Well, I think we're just about at our time on here. We've got our closing words in there, and then we will pick up with another podcast. We'll have some more out there for our listeners. Amy, we're going to brainstorm. So for our listeners and viewers, we just kind of come together, co-regulate, regulate, and come up with an idea, right? So what's the topic going to be next? Find another podcast, look at the title that catches you, and go with that one.
Yeah, and I would invite people also to make suggestions. If you hear us talk about something and you want to hear more about that, because there are so many different, arenas and areas and things that we could go to. So, feel free to drop us a line, make a comment or whatever that, hey, can you tell us more about this? Because that helps us to know what is speaking to people, what is helpful for them, where we can go next. I think one of our ones coming up, because we were talking about different age groups and what regulation looks like for kids at different ages. I think our next one is talking about the teens and the young adults. And so we'll be talking about that coming up soon. But other than that, lots of different ideas, movies, books, there's examples of this everywhere. And so, if you've got questions or want us to expand, let us know.
And I did have, and I will wrap up on this one. I did have somebody ask me about being regulated or providing co-regulation in environments where you don't have a relationship with somebody, which is pretty broad. So it's the going into the job and you have the coworker that you're not really friends with, but they're always stressed. And when they come around you, you get engaged. So how do you handle? You're not in an intimate relationship. It's not a partnership. It's not parent-child. But how you respond to that. So anyway, that was a topic that came in. We can get to that. Anyway.
Good. Yeah.
All right. Once again, Regulation Revolution. We will catch back up with another podcast.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks.
Following program includes stories and situations that are not intended to identify any client or individual. Any similarities are coincidental and should not be considered reflective of any one person or group of people. The preceding program in no way constitutes therapeutic counseling and does not establish a therapeutic relationship or offer any premise of confidentiality with any listener or participant. If you or someone you know is in need of counseling services and reside in the Commonwealth of Virginia, please visit us at heartmindrva.com for more information.